Okay, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's Sage Intacct, your trusted nonprofit ERP solution webinar. My name is Lauren Hogan and I'm a regional marketing coordinator here at JMT. We're very excited to have our own Joel Wright lead us in today's webinar. He's one of our Intacct Solutions consultants here at JMT, and he's going to go over everything here in a moment. So just a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over to Joel. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section as you think of them. We'll save all of them until the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to submit them as they come. Also, just a reminder that we'll send you both some handouts and the recording of today's webinar within 24 hours after it has concluded. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Joel, to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. And hello, everybody. As Lauren said, my name is Joel Wright. I'm a solutions consultant with JMT Consulting. I wish you could all see my face. For some reason, the camera's not working, but then again, I'm glad you can't. I just came back from an amazing vacation, and I have a very weird tan line. But in today's Zoom calls, you always got to be ready for the camera. So it's catch-22, I guess, here. I wish I could see you all or you could see me, but at the same time, I'm happy. This tan line is crazy. But if you wanted to get a picture of JMT Consulting, if you're seeing my screen okay, everybody here holding the coffee, looking at a computer screen is essentially what you have at JMT. So we have an amazing marketing team. I'm joking, of course, none of those are us, but they're very excited about what's on that screen. And so my goal for us today is to hopefully make each one of you smile like these people based on what I'm going to share with you about Sage Intacct and why we recommend it for our nonprofit clients. So jokes aside, I hope everybody had a happy Easter. And I'm very excited. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. I really just want to make sure to keep your attention, and hopefully out of this presentation today, you're going to learn a little bit more about Sage Intacct, its functionality, but you're also going to learn about JMT and who we are, just in case you haven't tuned into one of our webinars before in the past. So speaking about those goals, if I could get the presentation to work here. If you want to learn about JMT Consulting, I think the best place to start is learning about our CEO, Jackie Tiso, our namesake, hence JMT Consulting. She started JMT 30 years ago, back in 1991. And so we're honored. We just surpassed our third decade, which is a very rare thing in business today. So Jackie was a CFO at a nonprofit many decades ago, and she went through a lot of different accounting package changes and just never really had a very good experience. And she felt there's got to be a better way. And she went through her final accounting package experience as a CFO at a nonprofit, and she was very hands-on, learned a lot about the technology. And following the implementation, she was able to go back in, refine the tech to work better for that nonprofit, and shared her story with other CFOs at nonprofits who eventually asked her to come out and do the same thing for them, which ultimately led to JMT. So we're all thankful for her passion towards the technology and the nonprofit space. But today, I mean, we dedicate all of our time solely towards nonprofits. And so this is something that our marketing team put together, but I think it pretty much captures the culture at JMT. We were built to help nonprofits achieve their missions by a team of people dedicated to serving nonprofits. And I'm definitely a part of this. My own self, I live in the Dallas area, and found myself becoming deeper and deeper involved with the nonprofit community here, volunteering my time with some local nonprofit associations. And if you were to speak to anybody at JMT, I think you would find that we're definitely passionate about the nonprofit community, and what a great environment for us to wake up and know that we have such great clients that we work with. If you were to ask Jackie, what's the secret to success? I think she actually did a webinar on this. Hopefully some of you were able to tune in on this. I think it was last month. How can you make a company last 3 decades? What's the secret sauce? Her answer was pretty inspiring. She said, I think it's because of my background working in nonprofits and the fact that I'm extremely mission driven. The mission driven mindset, you just figure out a way, right? You figure out a way to keep it going. And so we definitely share that at JMT. And so hopefully you could understand some similarities there, knowing that each of you come from a nonprofit. Put together this slide here. It basically shows that JMT works in all different areas for a nonprofit. So depending on anything that may be going on in your organization, maybe it's on the development side or the program side, we do have a lot of resources here. And so today we're going to focus really up on the top left here with Sage Intacct, but this is just to give you an idea of what services we provide. And since we've been around for 30 years and we've worked only with nonprofits, I'm sure you could imagine that we've worked with all different shapes and sizes of nonprofits. So here are just some of the logos of clients that we worked with. You could see health centers, colleges, religious organizations, all types of different nonprofits that we've worked with. So enough about us. What's important to you? So if you're tuning into this webinar, you may have heard of Sage Intacct before, and you probably know what ERP means. And so truly the subject matter of this webinar is about your systems. And, my role, as Lauren had mentioned in her dialogue, is truly working with nonprofits that are interested in considering Sage Intacct. And through my years of working in this position, what I found to be a commonality with each of the clients that ultimately made that switch is that they're looking for these things that are important. And I'm not going to go through and read these, but I do want each of you that are tuning in, if you do have something that potentially I'm missing here, please put it in the chat. But reporting is always a big one. A lot of clients that I deal with are working with a system that doesn't really have a very dynamic reporting component. A lot of times they're spending time by creating reports and manipulating data to essentially give them a separate report. So potentially exporting 2 or 3 different Excel files, meshing them together to get something that maybe is for your board or maybe for your auditors. And the amount of time that they spend on that is just kind of frustrating. Anybody that's in finance in a nonprofit is probably pretty good at Excel, but at the same time, you don't want to be spending all your time in Excel and trying to make that happen. So, having something that provides that right out of the box is super important. Secure and stable. We have a partnership with another firm, not Sage Intacct, where they lost access to their data. Our clients did not have access to it. So something that is stable, meaning that you're going to be able to get access to your general ledger, basically do your day-to-day job, is super important. And also you want to make sure it's secure. Grant management. Tons of clients are working. They're essentially managing their grants in Excel whenever it can be done in their ERP system. So again, this is just something that I feel is important to you. If I'm wrong in any of these, please share that in the chat, or if I'm missing any, I would love to hear it because it'll be better for the next presentation around. So please add that. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a call for my extended warranty, I think. All right, so speaking about the system and what's important to you, what really changes the game in looking at the system. And And so if you've been in the industry for a while and you've kind of followed technology trends, what you've noticed is, late 90s, early 2000s, there's this perpetual software, which was essentially hardware downloaded onto your computer. And in order to keep it up to date, you had to pay some sort of maintenance fee and probably had to go through a rigorous process to download the latest version. It required some IT input and deploy it out to your team. Later 2000s and where we are today is really this subscription model. Everything's moving towards subscription. And why I say it changes the game is because that hard is kind of an anxiety that you had whenever a new perpetual system came out with an update and having to go through that update. You weren't really sure how that was going to affect your system. And it created anxiety, whereas I think all those kinks have been figured out in a subscription model to where these updates to the database could be delivered to you completely seamlessly, where you don't have any sort of downtime that you need to download the latest update. It just kind of happens. And so the true cloud versus partly cloudy really kind of speaks to the perpetual versus subscription. Partly cloudy solution is something that I consider was a perpetual system before and is now hosted to be a cloud solution. And so it's kind of the old version that is now hosted by somebody else that's delivered to the client as a cloud solution versus a true cloud solution, which was built in the cloud. And so these are two really big components, especially when we were talking about just the speed of a system. A true cloud system is much faster, so you're not having to wait minutes for reports to be downloaded. Also, just its ability to play well with other systems is completely different in these two environments. So these are big changes to the game. And the next things on this list kind of play into this true cloud environment. So if you're really looking for a system, making sure that it's true cloud is going to be really imperative, just to make sure that you're on something more modern. And so looking at that and where JMT comes from, being completely independent, we've identified Sage Intacct as really the best in class out there for nonprofit organizations. We've worked with perpetual systems. We've worked with partly cloudy. We've worked with several of them out there. And it's part of who we are. We're 100% independent, and we test out the companies that we represent. And truly, there just hasn't been anything as good as Sage Intacct. And these three words here, integration, automation, and visibility, best describe what Sage Intacct provides our clients with. It plays well with other systems. It offers machine learning that creates automated functions for your day-to-day tasks, saving time. And there's true visibility. Everything's in real time. As you make an entry into the system, it's visible in your budget to actual report, or potentially you need a budget to committed report. All these things kind of play into its core setup. And it's not just us. G2 Crowd, which is a third-party review company, basically takes reviews from actual users of systems, and you could go and do a side-by-side comparison if you're looking at all the companies out there and see, the pros and cons of what a system looks like. And so what this grid is showing, down on the bottom here, you could see satisfaction, and on the right is market presence. So as you go right, you have more satisfied users, and as you go up, market presence basically means sales. And so Sage Intacct they don't have the highest market presence, but they do have the highest client satisfaction, which is very important. It just basically means they haven't sold as much, but their customers they have sold to are very satisfied, which to us is a good, I guess it signifies the fact that they're not taking on more than what they could chew, in my eyes. If you sell too much, maybe the service goes down, so on and so forth. So the other good thing is, speaking to if any of our other clients were on another product that maybe didn't have access to their product last year in 2020, Intacct's uptime has been 99.97%, which is really impressive. So speaking about those things, what I thought would be helpful is to just show you the highlights of the system and what I see. So Lauren, are you able to see my screen okay? Are you seeing Sage Intacct here?
Yep.
Great.
Looks good.
Good. Well, I don't want to dig too deep into this system, but I do want to speak to the items that I feel like each client that we present this to tend to come back like, wow, that's really awesome. So right off the bat, you could see kind of going back to that true cloud versus partly cloudy. What's going on here is essentially a notification about any new releases that are going to be coming out within the system. So again, these releases, this is a true cloud system, they're going to hit the system. And oftentimes you could actually beta them before they hit. And you could also look at release notes. Sage Intacct, 30% of their clientele is nonprofit, which is great because a lot of their new releases actually impact our nonprofit clients. But this is just something, as soon as you log in, you're going to see what new releases are coming out. If you come down here on the bottom right, there's just different ways to get to where you want to get in the system. And there's also up here at the top where you can pull down what component within the system you want to look at. There's a global search. So if you wanted to pull up a specific entry or anything within the system, you could go on ahead and look at that there. And then there's also this component called collaborate within the system that you could actually communicate with your team and share comments on specific journal entries or really anything in the system if you had a question about it. So it's kind of like this social media component within your GL. And so this, I had the comment here and I clicked on it, pulled me directly to this general ledger account to take a look. So I'm going to go back to the home screen. So we spoke about what's important to you, having reports, right? A lot of different reports. So if I come into the financial reports, and let's say I want to look at actual versus budget by grant. We'll click on that and open this up here. You can see in this demo environment, I have two grants. I have the Bohemian and the federal grants. And this is just a trend analysis where I could see what's going on. I have the actual versus budget. You have the difference. And as you see, there's this blue here, which is, I'm sure all of you have been on the internet. If it's blue, you could click on it. And so it pulls up that report that made up that basically, was it $500,000? Yeah, 586. So you could see all the different entries that made up that amount, and you could go as deep as you want. So if I wanted to look at this, let's say, dives in a little bit deeper, and I could see, okay, what was the contribution from Wellness Center for the Bohemian Foundation? So I could see it right there. You could also add attachments. So any sort of attachment to this record, you could do it here. So it could be as simple as a drag and drop to have that pulled up, which, saves a bunch of paper. You don't need that paper file anymore to have that source document tied to the actual entry. Okay, I'm going to go back. And I haven't seen any chat come through, so if you do have any questions, let me know. I don't think I'm missing any. Definitely love to hear any questions you have. All right. So if you're a nonprofit, it's a good chance you might have grants. And so Sage Intacct could certainly manage all your grants and contracts. And so some of the clients that I work with sadly have a fiscal year, and for whatever reason, their ERP system is not able to maintain the grant contract year if it's separate from their fiscal year. So let's say you're 10-1, but you're awarded a grant like this, it's 11-1, then that just creates so much complexity for you to maintain your books. And so complexity leads to excel. And so they end up kind of having to manage that, which, I feel for them. They definitely make do with what they have, but it's not really needed in today's environment. So as you can see here, this is basically just the contract details. So as the grant's awarded to you, you build out this, it's basically their profile within the system. And so you could have this for multiple grants. And I'm just going to kind of click through here. A lot of these you probably wouldn't need. My demo environment's pretty souped up. So it's got all these different tabs up here. But, for example, here it's talking about an employee, so there's specific employees that are tied to this grant. There's a contract summary. So all these different things. So you basically build out the profile of the grant. And so that way, whenever you tag any bills to it or any sort of entry to it at all, it already has this framework within the system to assist you to make sure that you're not, if it's a restriction, that it's not going towards a specific grant. So I'm going to go back to the home screen here, and I'm going to go to accounts payable and enter a bill. So speaking about machine learning and where it could really save some time, if I wanted to say, I could do a drop down, I guess, and let's look at FedEx because everybody's shipping stuff. So as you can see, you could populate it from the last bill, which is basically pull all the previous information in here. And you didn't really see what just happened because I didn't have it at the right area of the screen. But basically, all this down here, the grant and contract, the account, fund, all of that was pre-filled based on clicking that button. And what each one of these are called dimensions within Intacct. And so each one of these components could be filtered upon and reported on as needed through the system. So a couple of things to point out here are this little button here, which is magic. As soon as I click billable, what that means is this bill can now be billable towards, well, this is no grantee, but if, let's say this is a Bohemian Foundation and I click billable, then as soon as I run a report for bills or applied expenses towards the Bohemian Foundation, then this entry will come up. So if you're needing to say submit an invoice with documented detail as to what's attached to that invoice for each one of your grantors, this button right here is truly magical for that. Another thing here is that the allocations can be built within the system. I know quite a few folks that are doing their allocations outside of their ERP system in Excel. There's fixed allocation, so if it's like a percentage or maybe just a dollar amount, depending on potentially the account or the fund, then that could be pre-built. And then there's also dynamic allocations, which could do really customized allocation models that could be applied based on the entry that you're putting in it. So just quite a bit here. And I know this is a very short time, but this whole component right here just is what truly saves our clients a ton of time, being able to make this billable, have it tied back to the grant, and have all of this here. And it's just very easy to populate and very easy to train up the staff on, as you can see up here too. So this is part of the new update. So you could actually look at a demo. So I think that's more than I intended to show today. So I'm going to go back over here to the presentation unless anybody had any questions. No? All right. Well, looking at Sage Intacct, it's an amazing tool. And just like if you were to look at it in a construction, I guess, scenario, you could have a construction crew that has great tools, but potentially they're inexperienced and don't know how to use those tools. And so that ends up to be a kind of a bad, that ends up being a bad configuration. But if you have a great tool with a great partner behind it, somebody that's experienced and knows exactly or has done kind of what you're needing to get done multiple times, and that's a perfect recipe. So we believe Sage Intacct is an amazing tool, but at the end of the day, it's our expertise, our professional services team that has done this literally thousands of times, and we've got this down to a science to make sure that our clients are satisfied and happy. This is a client of ours that obviously, put a reference together for us and put together this quote. The needs of a nonprofit, solely focusing on what is exactly what you would want in a consulting group. So we would love to continue down next steps with you. If you had any questions about Sage Intacct or want a little bit more of a deeper demonstration of it, or would like to discuss maybe what some of the things your nonprofit's going through right now, we would love to set up a call and have that discussion with you. So I think I'm right on time, Lauren. I haven't looked at the clock.
Yeah, that is all good. Thank you so much,
Imagine
Joel,
that.
for your presentation.
Yeah.
So don't forget, you can submit your questions into the Q&A down below. We can just wait a little bit, see if any come through. And as Joel said, next steps, we would love to set up a meeting with you. If you wanted to contact us, we will be making follow-up calls from this webinar. So we would just love to even just learn more about your organization as well. But it looks like we don't have any questions come through, so we'll just go ahead and conclude the webinar today. So thanks again, Joel, for leading us, and thank you everyone for being here. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.